All right, Ramblers, let's get rambling.
That was the Partridge Family's Doesn't Somebody Want to Be Wanted, followed by Edison Lighthouse's Love Grows Where My Rosemary Goes, as K. Billy's super sounds of the 70s weekend just keeps on trucking.
You wanna fuck with me? I'll show you who you're fucking with. You think I did it? You think I fucking set you up? I don't know, but somebody did.
Say the goddamn words, you're gonna be okay!
Are you gonna bark all day, little doggy, or are you gonna bite?
What the fuck was I supposed to do?
How would you feel if every time you ever take a piss, you had to do a fucking handstand?
Panic hits me like a bucket of water. First there's a shock, and then bam, right in the face.
Two ways you can go on this job. My way or the highway.
Buddy, I'm gonna shoot you in the face!
I don't have the slightest fucking idea what you're talking about.
We're supposed to be fucking professionals.
You ever listen to K. Billy's super sounds of the 70s?
Welcome, rapscallions, big and small, to the first inaugural episode of the Tarantinocast. I'm a demon, and also your host, Mr. Orange. I don't have a real name. That's who I am. We're joined by Mr. Pink. You know who you are.
Yeah, I don't tip. I don't believe in tips. My dick doesn't even have a tip. It just keeps going.
Known killer of men, Mr. Blonde. That's second person down alphabetically in the list. If you don't know who you are, you're Mr. Blonde.
Am I Mr. Blonde?
No, not you, idiot.
God
it's the other guy.
Damn it!
What? Is that me?
Yeah, you.
Oh, hey, it's me. I'm the asshole. I ruin everything.
Let me see. Bottom guy. You're Mr. White. Yeah, you.
You know we're all organized
We're
differently
all different.
depending on our own screens, right?
Why did we not discuss this at all before the podcast?
It's my way or the highway. There's only one way to do this job, and I'm telling you, you're Mr.
God damn
White.
it, Mr. Orange, you're making a big fucking mistake right now, introducing everybody this way.
Obviously, Tom should be Mr. Orange because he's, dead on the ground.
No, he's Mr. White because, like, Japan, white is death.
Oh, okay.
And he's a weeb. There you go. And you're definitely Mr. Brown. You are definitely Mr. Brown.
I'm
There's
okay with that. I'll be Mr. Brown. Because Mr. Brown is played by Quentin Tarantino, who directed this movie that we're going to talk about, Reservoir Dogs, his first film from 1992.
Reservoir Dogs, Quentin Tarantino's first feature film, co-produced by Harvey Keitel, who plays Mr. White. Box office, it was an indie movie at the time, premiered initially at the Sundance Film Festival, went on to moderate success in the United States, and after the release of Pulp Fiction, became a classic. In retrospect,
both went to Wikipedia after watching the movie.
I did, my dude.
Why would you do such a stupid thing?
Disgusting.
Oh, it's cool. It's cool to know how it became popular.
Is this just a theme? Every time Nate intros a podcast, we got to go to some dictionary /
I like the basic.
Site.
Don't say my name! Don't say my name! This is the job! You're getting the bullet. If you say that one more time, forget that. Strike that from the record.
Well, I'll tell you,
I'm Mr.
I wanted
Orange.
to go to Wikipedia just to confirm the story that I remember, because what interests me the most about this film's production is that Tarantino was just working at a video store when he wrote this script. He was just going to shoot it with his friends on like a $30,000 budget. And he, I believe, gave the script to his acting teacher, who passed it along to Harvey Keitel, or Harvey Keitel's wife, who passed it to Harvey Keitel, whatever.
Yeah,
it ended up with Harvey Keitel, and he just like loved the script and was like, I'll fund the movie.
He made it happen.
It's a perfect script. Everything is
It
the best
is. This
thing.
is. I'm just going to say right now. So this is the Tarantino cast. The goal of this quest is to do all, potentially, by the time we're done, 10 of Tarantino's written and directed films. There are 9 out right now. Who knows when this will finally end and we get to the end.
I mean,
maybe
it
by
takes
then
a while
it'll be
for
out.
his movies to come out usually.
Maybe in like 5 years or something. We'll probably finish this before it, to be fair, if we're on time. But this is his first, and in my opinion, I know not everybody agrees with this, by far my favorite of Tarantino's films.
Interesting.
I've watched this movie so many times. I'll just say that in senior year of college, I believe it was. You know how nowadays I'm a weirdo who listens to ASMR like every day as I'm going to sleep? This movie on my PSP with my headphones hooked up was my ASMR. I would watch like 20-minute clips every day of my life as I was just getting ready for bed because I just love it that much. So this is a movie with a lot of personal
Mr. Orange,
attachment.
For someone who's watched this movie so many times, you seem to be revealing a lot of personal information about your backstory to help me identify you.
It's because I'm emotional. As the themes of the film, emotions, they're clouding my judgment.
Obviously, Nate should have been Mr. White here.
You know what? I should have been Mr. White. It's just too late, though.
It is one of those films that you can kind of, I mean, like, regardless of whether it's your favorite or not, of, like, his filmography. That's the fucking word. It is one of those films that you can look at structurally and go, that's a perfect film. Everything in it fits
as Gabe was saying, the script it's so flawless. There's no fat on the. I love it. It's so lean.
Well, I don't know about there's no fat. I mean, part of the point of the movie is that there's the juicy fat.
Well, okay, sure. There's lots of talking about things that don't matter, but every story is in service of the point.
They serve like to introduce and endear us to the characters. Like I legitimately enjoy all of the fat. Like it's just tasty. It's just really good.
I guess it's more fair to say that I love every moment of this film. Not that every single one was vital for the plot.
Yeah, my first on my notes, my first note is like I like the whole movie. That's my first note.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, this was Tom's first time seeing, but everyone else had seen it before, right?
I just finished watching it like 10 minutes ago for the first time.
Well, first, so what do you think? What's your impression?
I thought it was fucking great.
Excellent.
I've seen a couple Tarantino films. I'm not well versed in all of his stuff, so this was the first time seeing Reservoir Dogs. I didn't know anything about it going in. I just knew it was going to be a movie that would probably be cool, and it delivered on that. I guess something I liked right from the beginning is like the very beginning is like this dude's fucking shot. And that whole
talk about a powerful opening
was fucking great because like
in my notes, my very first note that I jotted down was Tim Roth is awesome.
Yes.
Tim Roth is unbelievably good. I'll save this for later, but the scenes, Tim Roth's most powerful scenes in this movie are just straight up some of my favorite cuts in any movie I've ever seen. Specifically when he's doing his flashback later.
It seems like it would be such a cool acting role to do because like he spends the entire movie on the floor bleeding and screaming, and yet somehow is like one of the most developed characters in a movie where all the characters are really well developed.
Yeah,
damn right.
I thought it was just cool because like it's such a great way to start the movie because it really sets the scene and grounds the entire movie. Because like how many times do you watch a movie where a dude's shot in the gut and like he's just like ow. Darn.
Well, let's not forget that is an incredible setup, but let's not forget the actual start of the movie, which is, of course, the scene at the diner in the morning where they're all having breakfast. The very first story we hear is, I mean, it's gone down in the annals of film history about how Like a Virgin is actually about how Madonna had a tight-ass pussy.
Stupidest fucking monologues ever written in the history of monologues.
Like, I don't know about you, but I'm into it.
I like to, like... I want to look at it like, okay, that's Quentin's character is a stupid fucking moron. But like, if Quentin himself wrote that thinking it was like really profound, then Quentin Tarantino is just kind of a stupid fucking moron because it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Considering some of the other stories told, I'm sure he put that in to make the character seem ridiculous.
Yeah, and, I definitely took it as like, this is the sort of rowdy rabble that is congregating at this diner.
Right. It
like
felt like
you don't know that they're
natural.
criminals initially, but like you can sort of sense it before they actually get into it.
Like all the other guys are just bantering like how normal like bad dudes would banter, but then like everything out of Mr. Brown's mouth is like, okay, so this character is like the 12-year-old inside a grown man's body.
Well, that's why it's so perfect that Tarantino plays him.
Yeah.
Like, I look at it as, when I saw that opening scene, he kind of came off as like this awkward autist guy, you know, like this weird, he's obsessive, he's talking about all this pop cultural shit, and like, you have to imagine the conversation would not have been about song lyrics if not for the fact that he starts off that way, and he gets so accusatory towards, what's the name of Joe's son?
Nice Guy Eddie. That's
Nice Guy Eddie. Like when Nice Guy Eddie's like, oh, I just realized that song was about this, and Mr. Brown's all like, you didn't realize? Like, what's wrong with you? You don't analyze all the lyrics of every song you listen to, you know? Yeah, like he definitely comes off as that's the point, is that he's like this weird, awkward guy, which is exactly what Tarantino is, and I think it's good to introduce that element early on because like this film. it has that like deeply personal and very nerdy. All of his movies have tons of, you know, old music, homage to film history. Like they're nerdy movies on the inside, even if what you outwardly are seeing is like cool guys shooting guns and shit, you know.
Indeed. And furthermore, to strengthen this point, consider that in his next film, Quentin, of all actors, of all people, he chose himself to be the one. Now, let me just preface by saying, these films, they have some bad words in them. The characters in the movie are no fans of the esteemed African-American community of the United States of America. And in the sequel, Pulp Fiction, Quentin Tarantino's film, while talking to another black guy who he seems to like very well, asks that do they think that he is a man who runs dead storage out of his house. And I mean, he chose to give himself that line. Very, he's making himself look ridiculous.
Quentin Tarantino is a wise man. He understands that certain words are just funny and okay no matter what, and everyone can say them, and they're always hilarious, and they always will be.
That sure is a great line. But okay, let's break it down real fast. So, sorry, I was saying that about the opening scene here. We get this opening scene of all these guys chat. Like clearly, like you said, this is banter designed to kind of get us off guard and get us thinking like, oh, it's just a bunch of, like, I don't know what these guys are doing. They're in suits. That's a little strange. I wonder who these guys are at this table. We hear this ridiculous story about Madonna. It's totally benign discussion. Then they have this badass opening scene to Lil Green Bag, which is one of the most legendary opening songs of any movie ever. And then hard cut to a man bleeding out on the floor of the back of this car. Like that's quite a transition from the upbeat attitude at the beginning.
There's a lot of things in this movie that are, in hindsight, are just really clever that he thought to write the script that way. Like, for example, the fact that you never see the heist. You just you only hear people talking about it, and you see like what happened like around it and like during it.
That's the story of the movie, to reveal what happened. What a perfect way to handle probably having very little budget.
And they I
wouldn't want to see it.
They really do a good job of like through dialogue painting the picture in your head. You can almost see it, like when Harvey Keitel's character is talking about Mr. Blonde going apeshit, and he's like, "Hey, how old was that black girl? Like 20? What was up with that?" It's like you can almost like see that like there's like a young black girl who got shot in the face or something. Like, oh, that's sad.
It's so much more vivid in our imaginations than it would be if we, like, I mean, I'm always a guy who says, like, I literally skip action scenes. I just find them boring. Just tell me who wins, which I know not a lot of people agree with.
And it's genius because, like you're saying, it's the least interesting scene that could have been shown. Like, it has no, like, it has ramifications for the characters, but it doesn't tell us anything about the characters that the surrounding scenes won't tell us, you know? And it did, he said something about originally it was just because of budgetary constraints, but once they had the money to do it, he just decided, I just like the idea of not showing it, so let's just go
perfect.
with it.
It's perfect.
It's
the slow reveal of the mystery
that
over
shot
the movie.
Was interesting too, because it's like a banal conversation that's kind of just like we're going to learn the context for it eventually anyways, but it's just one shot and it holds on that one shot, and only one of the actors in the scene is even in the frame for half of it.
Which shot are you talking about?
When they both come back to the hideout for the first time, and they're like washing their hands, and like it just held on that shot for a long time. And like,
do you mean the long shot of Mr. Pink and Mr. White in the back,
right?
When they're like going, over?
And like Mr. Pink is even in frame for like half of that shot when they hold on it for like a couple minutes. It's just like such a very odd way to shoot it.
I noticed that a lot. Like it's kind of set up sort of like a stage play almost, where like shots linger for a long time. And there's a lot of shots that are far away with like all the characters in the frame at once. A lot of parts of the movie would make like a screensaver or a desktop. And it's just, it's not a lot of cuts. It's cool.
I don't know why it's cool, but I really like it.
And it sounds like a knock against it, but I mean it as a compliment. Every dialogue scene lasts for just a little bit longer than it feels like it should, because everyone's just kind of rambling.
Right. The dialogue feels very natural.
But through that, you get this complete picture of all these characters, and they all come off really three-dimensional, and they're super well defined. And you sort of know, like, within the first 10 minutes, that, like, okay, Mr. Pink is like the Raphael, he's the smarmy, he's pragmatic to a fault, he doesn't want to get involved, he doesn't want to risk his own neck. And Mr. White is, like, kind of the honorable thief. And it's really cool how Mr. Blonde shows up last, so you don't see him until you've had time for the characters to talk about what a fucking psycho he is, so he's kind of built up It's cool. So by the time you see him, you know.
By the time you see him, you have all this expectation about when he finally shows up, and it's incredible. Actually, I don't think we know immediately. We haven't associated the name Mr. Blonde with what's his name, Michael Madsen's character at that point. No. I mean, obviously they say immediately.
Yeah, we don't know who's
Mr.
Blonde and who's Mr. Blue. Is
this movie keeps you so off guard or he's off balance as to which character is which with all the code.
You know,
names
it's funny to think about it that way, and I guess I can defer to Tom for some information about this because like this movie, I mean, it's been out since almost as long. Well, yeah, almost as long as I've been alive.
I was 2 when this came out. Yeah,
I was 1, and the first I ever saw of it was I just saw the very ending scene, like on TV or something when my dad was watching it. So like watching it for the first time, I already knew a lot of what was what was going on. So yeah, it's like I have to really, when I think about it intellectually, I'm like, oh yeah, I guess they didn't reveal who was Mr. Blonde or like what was going on there, but yeah, like it's one of those movies where when you watch it again, it's kind of like seeing everything fall into place, you know? You're like, oh
it's
yeah,
totally worth watching multiple times.
Now that I know what's really going on and you see it again, you're like, interesting. This changes my perspective on what those early scenes were. Like knowing that Mr. Orange is a cop the whole movie definitely changes your feelings about it.
When I'm watching the opening scene, I mean, I'm noticing how Mr. Orange and Mr. White are like buddy. And so in the opening scene where Mr. Orange is shot in the back of the car and he's freaking out, the way that Mr. White is talking to him, I mean, obviously we don't know them at all at this point. It's like he's honestly like babying him. He's like, say I'm a tough guy, and he's crying in the back, I'm a tough guy, Larry, I'm a tough guy. I mean, it's so like over the top, like I know the guy's stuck in the back, he's fucking bleeding out, he's gonna die. He's trying to hype him up, and he's trying to make him laugh too. Not just tell him it'll be okay. You know, actually, I don't know, keep his spirits up and shit. You can really feel a strong bond, and like when you see that, I'm immediately wondering like, okay, what's their relationship? And like the way you learn about how they met and like them prepping for the heist before it happens, you see way at the end of the movie, and like learning about how Mr. Orange got ingratiated into like the gang and shit.
It's really cool as well because it like the fact that he's like a father-son bond with this guy who he hasn't known for very long tells you so much about Mr. White's character that he probably like has a family and like he maybe has or had a son. Like you can fill in the gaps.
I mean, I'll just say that like I see one of the main themes of the movie. There's a lot, but it's like obviously how emotions can like fuck up like like the best laid plans of mice and men often go astray. These guys didn't lay out an amazing plan. Like they had an undercover cop working with the job the whole time, so that's not a great sign. But obviously these guys are like mostly pro professionals and they know what they're doing most of the time. But like even despite that, like when let's just cut to the end of the movie. Spoilers all over the place, people, if that wasn't clear. At the end, when we see how Mr. Orange got shot, and he just gets not like they're escaping from the crime scene. He's obviously thinking like, okay, I'm a cop. How do I get out of this? How do I survive this horrible, thing gone wrong? And they stop a car. Him, Mr. White, pulls out the lady. They've got guns to her face. Hey, get out of the car. We need that to drive away. The old lady, totally randomly shoots one in Mr. Orange's belly. There was no plan for this. This was completely accidental. And then Mr. Orange fucking kills her in self-defense. We get why he did this. This was not what he wanted to happen. And just like what a total clusterfuck.
In any other movie, the undercover cop would be the hero, but he does like kill a random lady, albeit it is in self-defense. But the most honorable character in the movie is Mr. White. He's like the most empathetic. He's taken care of Mr. Orange the whole time. And like also, in what other movie would like the hero of the movie spend the whole movie bleeding to death on the floor?
Yeah, I know, right? But I mean, the thing about Mr. White that's interesting, I mean, there's a lot going on with that guy. Mr. Pink is the only like real like cold-hearted professional of the entire group. Maybe Eddie a little bit and maybe Joe, but even those guys, like Joe does this thing where he acts on instinct. Eddie is he's just like kind of a big kid. He's got a little whatever. He's partially professional, but not totally.
Blinded by their emotion at one point, except for
every
Mr.
character.
Pink.
Yeah, you're right, except Mr. Pink. By the way, guys, did you know? So for the longest time, I thought that at the end of the movie, Mr. Pink gets away scot-free.
No,
I happened to go to...
You hear the cops outside telling someone to, like,
fuck off. See, honestly, I've listened to this movie so many times, I never listened closely, because in that scene, it's the incredible emotional climax between Mr. Orange and Mr. White, where Mr. Orange admits to White that he is a fucking cop. This is, like, the biggest deal in the movie. This is all of it coming undone. And in the back, like in the left channel, way in the back, underneath the sounds of Orange and White, like emoting and shit, you can hear them saying, like, get out of the fucking car. You hear Mr. Pink trying to rev the car to start to drive away. He can't do it. Only this time listening did I hear that and hear him actually get captured.
I didn't hear that either. I thought it was like left up to your like what you want to happen. He drives away and then they shoot at him, but like whether he gets away or not is whether you
it's a little ambiguous.
It's kind of ambiguous, but they definitely ran into the cops somehow.
We hear them say things like get on the ground, like put down the gun and you get out of the car. So like based on that, it seems Wikipedia says that in the background you can hear Mr. Pink quote getting arrested. So I'm gonna defer to the experts.
I just assumed he got killed because of all the gunshots.
He might have. I don't think we hear gunshots.
It's great how every character clearly has like a very well defined like fatal flaw and strength. Where like Mr. White is honorable, but he's a fucking sucker and he's too trusting.
Except our pure cinnamon bun, Mr. Blue, who just wants those poor waitresses to get their fair tips. He's a good boy. He didn't do nothing.
Oh, he did have a line. I forgot.
He did.
Mr. Pink is pragmatic, but he's a coward. Madsen is a psychopath. And I really love the arguments between Mr. White and Mr. Pink, because you get a sense that both of these guys, in their own way, are totally professional and pragmatic and are doing the right thing, but they just see it slightly differently.
Yeah.
And it's a great argument. And then he throws him on the ground and kicks him, and it's fucking cool.
I love Mr. Pink so much. That one moment when they're washing their hands, and then like you say, "Hey, do you want to smoke or something?" And he's like, "Nah, I quit." Why? You got some?
It's just like it's great. It's great. You really, I just love the way that we're learning about their characters. I mean, talk about like learning through, actions. Even though like the actions are them, like a battle of ideas is going on here as they all talk and like discuss. Like when him and Mr. White are reviewing what happened, like you can see that Mr. White he missed some details. He was confused. Like he was more emotional in dealing with Mr. Orange. Right. Mr. Pink like goes down. He like corrects the errors that Mr. White makes in his analysis. So you can really see that, like, okay, Mr. Pink's a really detail-oriented guy. He's probably like you'd kind of think that he's like the traitor.
The most literally me character I've seen in a while. As I was watching this, I was just like, oh my god, Mr. Pink, this is how I feel about every situation, particularly not tipping.
Mr. Pink is sort of written, he does come off like the way that most people would react in this situation. Like he's constantly stressed out, he's rambling like a lunatic, he's really pissed off about everything.
He's constantly stressed out, but he doesn't he doesn't do anything rash. Like he's on the floor, like in the beginning, like he's getting kicked. And he's got his gun out.
Professionals,
But like, he's screaming about being like he's not like shitting his pants about the fact he's gonna get shot. He's keeping it together, and it's like kind of cool.
I think the interesting thing is almost that his flaw is that he keeps it two together, because like he's in the best situation. Like he's in
he should have listened to his gut and fucking ran.
Right. He's the one with the diamonds. He could have just bailed. Yeah. But he doesn't, and that kind of what fucks him over in the end.
I mean, the debate between him and Mr. White about what to do about Mr. Orange, I mean, that's really the big clash between the two, where Pink, really analyzing the situation, Pink is almost, you might even call him too cautious, because it's true that Mr. White broke the rules. He told his partner, Mr. Orange, his first name and where he was from, and they know that that's enough to identify him based on, like, they have a rap sheet on him, they have case files, they can find out exactly who he is, and Mr. Pink's fear is, like, they get you, they're then closer to me. That doesn't mean they got him, they're just closer, and in Mr. Pink's mind, that's enough to justify letting a man die, and, I mean, that's kind of cold. That's kind of cold to let a guy die just to, like, some percentage protect yourself.
I mean, if emotion is the theme of the movie, then Mr. Pink is the guy with not enough of it.
Yeah, probably. I mean, but I would literally do exactly what he did. But Mr. Pink did nothing wrong.
Is it lack of emotion, though? That seems like the emotion's fear. He's afraid for his own self. There's a lack of empathy, but I wouldn't say it's a lack of emotion.
Well, maybe the theme is more like emotion like getting in the way of making proper decisions. I don't know.
Yeah, it's really hard to fault Mr. Pink for his decisions, but I mean, just look at the reaction Mr. White had. He could have known that Mr. White would like have such a strong reaction to the idea of like letting a man die. Because I'm still a little bit. I've never quite understood why Mr. White got so attached to Mr. Orange. Yeah, we see him like buddying.
I wanted to bring up that's like my one kind of problem with this movie. Like I love this movie, but it's hard to buy into just how defensive he is, particularly when Joe and nice guy Eddie show up, because like he knows these guys. He's worked with them for a long time. I don't know why he would choose Mr. Orange over them.
I think maybe because he was just the one in the foxhole with him when he was bleeding out, and when you see that, you might feel for a guy.
I mean, when Mr. White says like he really feels it's my fault he got shot.
Right.
Like this is my responsibility. I need to protect this guy, and that clearly clouds his judgment.
Mr. White's been painted to be someone honorable to a degree, and so he has this sort of kinship with this guy, and he just feels responsible. I mean, I guess it kind of like I think. What Gibbs said, it kind of implies that maybe, Orange reminds him like a son he might have or something like that. There's definitely a lot you could read into that relationship.
A great little moment that I don't understand, but I have little headcanons about. So when we get to the flashback later, I mean, I watched this movie so many times. I feel like when I watch this movie, I feel about this movie the way like Red Letter Media feels about like every movie that they've seen a dozen times, and they know every detail and they know every scene, and they're like, this cut's great. But whatever. Like there's a scene where Mr. Orange is getting ready to go meet the guys. He finally gets the call, like, let's go. It's time for the meeting. We're gonna meet Joe or whatever. And he there's that thing. He gets his coat on. He puts his little secret like cop gun into his whatever boot or whatever. He puts his normal gun into his pocket. And then as he's about to leave the door, he pauses twice. But on his first pause, he closes the door. He walks back to a bowl of pennies, and there's a real close-up shot. I don't know why. I love this shot. As his fingers go through the pennies, he pours out the bowl. He keeps sorting through, and then he finds a wedding ring in that bowl. He takes the wedding and he puts it on his ring finger, and then he goes out the door. Now, I don't know about you guys. Mr. Orange doesn't look like he's married. He seems pretty young. I doubt he has like a dead wife or some ex-wife or something. My headcanon is that that's like his mom or his dad's wedding ring, and like his dad was a cop, and that he's using this for like the little bit of strength. Now, there's no answer, but like, why was that detail included?
I just assumed that it was like he wanted to make his disguise more empathetic. Like, like he's got a squeeze or something.
That's possible. Yeah. I mean, a wedding ring's he's not married. Surely he'd
I assumed that it was he had a legitimate connection to it, else why would he hide it?
Yeah.
It made me feel like his character he's playing doesn't have a connection like that, hence why he needed to hide it in the first place.
It's just one more hint that this character is like a real person and like has stuff about him that even we don't know. The movie is really rich in terms of like giving you those hints without telling you outright.
Tarantino spells out the playbook for that in the movie, because there's the scene where it's Samuel Jackson, right? He's telling...
No, that's just a different guy. It's just a different guy. It looks a little bit like him. Yeah.
The other guy is talking to Mr. Orange, and he's telling him like, you gotta be an actor. You have to know every detail of the scene. You have to know every single fucking fly on the wall in this bathroom, but you have to tell it from your own perspective. It's all about what you caught on to in that moment. And that's just a screenwriting lesson that he's giving right there. Like, and that is exactly what Tarantino is known for, is that he knows everything about his characters. He knows their whole upbringing. He knows what they care about. He knows absolutely everything, and then he just chooses to fixate on the details that will make, that will naturally evolve in this story.
He could probably make a movie starring Mr. Blue, despite the fact that we know nothing about him.
And I'm sure some of you guys are aware that Mr. Blonde is the brother of Vincent from Pulp Fiction.
That's right.
And there was supposed to be a movie about both of them called The Vega Brothers, but the actors both got too old before he wrote the script. But
too bad.
Like that's
too bad.
It's just like that's the level of detail we're at. It's like even the interconnectedness of the movies. Like he's just got a whole fleshed out universe, and he's just telling you like a little story in that universe. But by knowing everything possible, he can put in every little detail. And that's so important to a movie like this that was clearly, like, regardless of the fact that they managed to get together like $1 million to film the movie, which is not anything for a film. Like, I'm sure that all went to the actors and like the couple of cars that they had. But this movie is shot in like 6 locations. One of them's a fucking warehouse, which is actually it was like a funeral service place. Like in real life, because when Mr. Blonde is sitting on top of the stuff, he's like sitting on a hearse apparently. I just read that in like a trivia notes, but like, so he just, got a couple of locations that were really easy to get, some black suits and some guns, and like, that's it. That's all that's in the movie. But because the characters have such rich dialogue and they talk about themselves in so much detail, you really feel like this is real. It works as a movie. Right. You tune out the fact that it's in one location.
It's a credit to both his writing, being that it's his first real movie, and also the actors, where like,
oh my god, amazing acting.
Nothing sounds like acting. Nothing comes off like it's rehearsed. When
except
Mr.
for Tarantino's
Pink,
lines, I will say Tarantino's acting is not great.
But when Mr. Pink is having that long argument with Mr. White at the beginning, and they're going over what happened, it's because we know that Tarantino doesn't like improving. He likes, everything that is said is in the script. So when you're listening to Mr. Pink talk,
I love the line from Tarantino that's like, I pay my actors to read my lines.
Yeah.
I don't pay them to improvise. Yeah,
so when he's going through it and you're hearing it, it's like the dialogue sounds so believably frantic and rambling and stressed out and panicked. And like both, Buscemi is acting really well, and it's written that way.
It's the movie that made Buscemi.
Yeah.
Like the scene where Mr. Orange is like bleeding out, and Mr. White first brings him into the building. Like Mr. White says the same thing like 3 times in a row, barely any differently. And like normally that would be very repetitive, and it's not very movie-like, but it makes that dialogue so believable. That he's just panicking.
That's what you would do.
You wouldn't think like a movie that was written to have a line like, fuck you, I'm fucking dying here, I'm fucking dying. Like, he's just repeating himself, but, like, that's what a person would say. They would just be repeating themselves.
Yeah, it's so true.
Speaking of acting, my favorite acting moment in the whole thing was when Mr. Orange had just got in the car, and all the guys were just, like, talking and bullshitting about whatever. There was, like, close-ups of Mr. Orange, and you could tell through his like slight facial expressions and the way he was looking around that he was trying to gauge the room, and he was nervous about like being outed as someone weird that they couldn't trust, so he waited for the perfect moment to like add to the conversation. And it's like the whole rambling nature of that conversation, and the fact that like he did a thing and it made people laugh, and then he said another thing that was kind of weird and it got a bad response, and then he sort of shifted in his seat. It's just like so perfect. Like, I could definitely, it felt so real. I completely empathized with his plight of like, I can't make myself like look stupid in front of these guys because I'm undercover.
That'd be cool.
And it's no different from the way that we all actually feel just having regular conversations in a car with people like that.
Right.
It literally.
There's the added tension of the undercover cop, but
you're in a car. There's no escape. You got to be cool. You just live in your shame
that's
bubble.
true.
You can't escape from it.
Exactly. It felt like a real social interaction.
But it was like the directing and the acting of that, like, if all those lines were written, that was, like, so well done. It's unbelievable.
Well, I mean, while we're going to gush about Mr. Orange's performance, let me just say my little spiel on one of my favorite segments of any movie I've ever seen, which is everything about the commode story. First of all, like, like you said, like, the black cop is telling, like, the undercover cop, captain or whatever, is, like, telling Tim Roth, like, how to be an undercover cop, Mr. Orange, whatever. And, like you said, it's explaining it as acting.
You gotta be Marlon Brando.
It totally works. It totally works in every way. But it's the way that it's like a shonen montage where after he's given the story and he's given the paper, he's reading it, and we see like time skips as he is practicing the story to himself. Then we see him in this like this beautiful set, like covered in graffiti out in the middle of like New York or LA. I don't know if they're in Long Beach or whatever. And he's better at the story now. He's being really naturalistic. And then the montage finishes. It's so brilliant.
And by the end of it, it is a believable story. Like when you're watching that scene, even though you, the viewer, know that it's made up and it's bullshit,
I have to remind myself that it's
like
fake.
his panic in that story.
Halfway through the story, I'm like, why am I feeling tension? This is fake. It's gonna be fine.
Yeah, I know. It's so incredible. I don't know. It feels like, and what it says about like a film medium itself, it's like we have been told this is a fake story made up by this cop to convince these characters of how he feels. Now we're witnessing him tell the story, and within that story, there's another story as the other cops are telling this other unrelated story about how he like was arresting some guy. I feel tension from that story too, which is a fake story within a movie, none of which are real. What the fuck is going on?
The payoff is so palpable because you've had all this buildup of him trying to tell the story, and then as he's telling it, and they start asking him questions, and he immediately has answers.
He's just got
You're like,
the answer instantly.
Good boy, you know all of it.
That's his shonen power moment as he's exploding with power level over 9,000.
And then the way that story is actually presented is this much more like artsy than the rest of the movie presentation.
Yeah, for sure.
Which
the most
really gets you. What I love about that scene is that like that is how you as a listener of the story would be picturing it. Like they didn't show you like it literally happened. They're showing you like here's what you would be imagining as he tells this. Since like you as an audience member don't have to sit there and just imagine it for yourself. Like they give you this weird like kind of surreal energy, and like it has tension, but it doesn't feel like this is what really happened. It feels like this is how I would imagine it happening.
But like when he's talking, he'd be like describing how it went in slow motion for a second, and then you don't hear him say that. You just see him like like drying his hands really slowly, and it was so loud, and it was like, my heart was pounding. I thought it was going to happen, but then nothing happened, and I left.
The other reason that scene is so effective is because like it really puts you in his shoes to where when they buy the story, you're like, yes, they bought it. Everything's going to be cool. And then the very next scene is him getting ready for the heist in the car with the guys. And then you sort of remember as the viewer, oh yeah, I know how this ends. He's going to get fucked up in a bit. That's sad.
Yeah. And then you see, you're like, oh, he must have gotten shot by like a cop, or he must have gotten shot like obviously, but it's by a totally innocent person who wasn't even related. He's an undercover cop. He's not a real criminal. He's not supposed to be doing these things. Right. And this ties back into like the larger aspect of the movie, which is like, by just these guys telling these stories, getting us to be friends of them, just the way that Mr. Orange developed such a favorable impression of Mr. White, where at the end he feels so guilty. Like, okay, first of all, there's a lot going on here. Earlier in the scene where Mr. Orange, he first meets like his captain or whatever. I don't know why I keep calling him captain, like his boss, whatever, the guy who's teaching him how to be an undercover cop. Like that guy, his contact, that guy says to him in the scene, he's like, so how did it go? Like, were you able to get in close with Joe and the boys? He's like, yes. Long Beach Mike's referral was perfecto. Like this person who we never see on screen, this person obviously a criminal, Long Beach Mike, him saying that I'm like a reliable guy and made up a story that we did a job together, like that really went a long way towards helping me get in here. But and then he's like, yeah, he's a good guy. Make sure you do right by him. But the guy is like, no, Mr. Orange. Don't fucking forget, this man is literally betraying his friends right now. He's helping you so that he doesn't go to jail for 1,000,000 billion years. He is a scumbag criminal, and stop thinking favorably of him because he's doing nice things for you. He is a bad person. Who does that sound like to me? Maybe every character in this fucking movie who like does bad things, and yet we as the audience and the characters within the movie, we develop this attachment to them because they're a protagonist, but they're fucking scumbags. Like, Mr. Pink literally says to Mr. White at one point, like, did you kill any cops? Mr. White says, tagged a couple. And Mr. Pink says, no real people? No real people?
Well, that's
and
not,
Mr. White's like, nope,
bad.
just
that's
cops.
Totally unfair.
Yeah, fair. We can all agree on that. But, like, I really feel that this is something else that Tarantino is getting at. That like people write these movies off a lot of the time is like, not so much anymore, but in the back in the day, they'd be like, they're so violent, you just use violence for the sake of it. I think Tarantino's really making a point that like it's kind of fucked up. We like these characters so much. These are very, very bad people. They kill people, they rob from people, they do horrible things, they carjack some old lady who doesn't.
It's not even like they're worse than normal hero protagonists. It's just that the violence is more real. Yeah,
I guess so.
It's like criminals are real people, like the people who would do this would be like this. They would be funny, smarmy guys who who would chill. And like even like Mr. Orange, you get this sense like there's a scene where he's outside the bank with Harvey Keitel, and he's asking him like what they're gonna do in the situation, and he's kind of smiling and laughing along as he talks to him because they're funny. But then when he hears him say like if he if he tries to be a hero, like cut off his pinky and tell him you're gonna cut off his thumb, you see his face like sink a little bit, like ooh. But then like he's like, now let's get tacos, and he's like, oh haha,
Exactly my point. I feel a strong sense of that in the movie. And even at the end, Mr. Orange, at the very end, like everyone's dead, things have gone horribly wrong. Mr. White stands up for him and says, no, like when Joe comes in, he says, I know Mr. Orange did it because I got instinct. He's the only one I wasn't 100% on. And Mr. White's like, that's your proof? And so because of his emotional gut instinct to protect Mr. Orange because of his guilt and stuff, they end up shooting each other.
I really love just the sinking moment when he makes up the lie, I shot Mr. Blonde because he was going to betray all of us. And you think they're going to buy it, but the guy is like, are you stupid? This guy went to prison for us for like 4 years, and he didn't say a goddamn thing. And you're just like, shit, well.
He's the worst possible guy he could have made that claim about, that Mr. Blonde was the traitor, but nah. I mean, oh my God, we haven't even. I mean, let me just finish my point about the Mr. Orange thing. Then let's talk about Mr. Blonde, because he's got some fucking incredible scenes too. So the Mr. Orange thing, whatever. So he's telling a story. Like I said, it's like a shonen power thing. He tells the story once through, so we as the audience hear it once. It cuts between times of him telling it, with us not losing a beat. So we hear the full story as he gets better at telling it, and by the end, he's actually telling it to the criminals in a den to get ingratiated with them, and so that they'll dig him and think he's a real criminal, blah, blah, blah. And my favorite moment, like we said, we see him acting out this fictional event, Tim Roth doing the like pot sale job or whatever, walks into the bathroom with the cops, and it's so real for us. And my favorite shot in the entire movie is the one moment where like it's like a transcendent moment where Tim Roth is telling the story, but Mr. Orange he's acting, telling the story in the bathroom to the cops as the camera spins around. It's like we're breaking meta-narrative right now. It doesn't make any sense what's happening. The power of that moment and that cinematography, it's like, it's so, I love that moment so much. And that is literally my favorite shot, possibly of all time.
It's like the linchpin on that entire sequence. It's fucking great.
Just to bring to bring all of that to a head of what we
wait, sorry. Let me just say my and then the next moment as he's wrapping up the story, and there's just that one moment as Tom said before, he hits the fucking hand dryer, and just that cut that we know isn't really happening in the fiction. It's literally in the head of the character in a fictional situation, in a fictional story, and all those cops just staring at him as he, the character, would feel in this fictional story. And that one shot of that mustachioed cop staring into the camera haunts my nightmares to this day. It is a terrifying image. And then just walks out, and the tension's really incredible. 10 out of 10.
Literally telling a story about how he almost shot a guy who was not even reaching for a gun.
Very true. Yeah. Very true. It's my favorite image. I think I'm gonna make it my background right now.
With all this believability talk and everything, and like the meta text, I just gotta say, and I'm sure you don't mind if I say the word on your channel, Nate. But
I already did once, as long as it's in good taste.
The use of the word in Tarantino's films, I think, goes a really long way towards their like believability and what makes them sink in so much, because of the fact that
these are slightly racist characters, for sure.
Well,
for sure.
Even beyond like racism, just like that's how people fucking talk, like especially people in situations like these, people who are like uncouth. We're not supposed to think these guys are like good guys, but like they're
literally criminals.
And it's not even
not
that
good people.
I don't even think that they are like hugely racist. I think it's just that they're hanging out with other white guys, and that's the way that they talk together.
Yeah, I guess that's true too. Because they actually they deal. There are like black characters in the film. Well, okay, I guess there's only like the police guy, and he's like he's pretty favorably. He's like one of the best people in the he did no wrong, and he's just trying to like get justice and stuff. So like in the narrative of the movie, like the one black character is actually looked on very favorably. Oh, and I guess there's a story about Lady E too, and she's pretty well respected by the character who's like telling the story.
That's the thing. Like they're saying that she is attractive. They are all attracted to her. They all are fans of this old cop show. It's just like it's something that I think a lot of people these days, especially younger people, would have trouble kind of grasping this because like.
Well, that's for sure.
There's a lot of people who, if they even hear the word come out of someone's mouth, they can't even like fathom how you would ever use the word and not just be a total racist. But like,
yeah, that's true.
When you're around like older people, especially, they throw it around not because they like hate black people, but because
it's
they
the
just
word.
think it's funny. Yeah. It's just a funny word, and like and saying. Like it's not only black people or only other races that they would be saying uncouth things about. That's just the way to do it to that group. It's like they would be saying these kinds of insults about anybody.
I mean, they do say wetback at one point.
Do they? I didn't even notice that.
Eddie says it at some point.
That's true. They definitely do. It's like watching, or it's like playing BioShock Infinite, and the way that they never call a black person like anything worse than like boy. It's like, wouldn't there be some words that'd be thrown around in like a really racist society, which this is? But we're not gonna, because it's rated PG.
Especially words that, well, that game's rated fucking M, but they
is it really? Well, then what's the excuse?
I mean, you fucking slam a grinder into a guy's fucking face in that movie.
But people are way more comfortable with violence than lots of other stuff.
Yeah, and that's what's funny about it. People are comfortable with violence more so than like sexuality or just like this kind of language. And it's like, I don't necessarily read it as like all these the characters are racist on some level for sure.
On some level, sure.
But like that's not the point of putting that in there. It's just like this is the way that this kind of person talks, and if you leave that out, it's the kind of thing where it makes all other movies less believable to me.
Yeah, Quentin said that, and
that's true.
He literally said, "I demand the right to tell the truth in my movies." It would be lying.
Yeah, I mean, especially since these are like criminals. Like if these were if it was like, I want to tell a movie about criminals, but I don't want people to be offended, so like I'll leave the N-word out of there. It's not that like you can't tell a story about criminals who don't say the N-word, but it's like it really adds to like that type of character. They do things that are not allowed, also shooting people to death.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's very true.
If you're willing to fucking shoot, an old lady in her car to steal her car, you're probably not afraid to put a hard R in there every now and then. You're past that.
Young people today are just totally oblivious to how like human beings actually talk to each other because young people have fucking never been outside. They've never talked to another human face to face. They don't get that, like, people say racist shit all the fucking time because it's goddamn funny.
I mean, because Quentin Tarantino himself, I can't remember. I think he said that his mom dated, like, mostly black guys growing up or something, and he was just, like, around. I know he grew up in, like, a super mixed community, and, like, when he grew up, like, that was part of his vocabulary frequently, which is why he was, like, so weirded out when people, like, had an issue with it.
I also know that Tarantino is known to only go see movies at black theaters because he likes to see them with black women.
With black, okay, that's cool.
He just likes to see movies with black ladies.
His demo, I guess. I don't know.
Just because they're fun to see movies with, I guess.
Well, that's cool.
But like in the crowd?
Yeah, don't tell me you've not heard the classic age-old stereotype about black people in the theater.
I don't. Things. I've never heard.
He's from Britain. I guess they have it's less.
We have a different flavor.
Everyone knows black people be yelling at the screen. It's okay to say it. It's okay to say it. It's a real thing. They really do it. It's not racist.
I believe you. I've never experienced that, though.
I have.
But okay, let's talk about Mr. Blonde, because Mr. Blonde's scene is probably the second best in the movie, and just absolutely legendary. So I didn't actually see Reservoir Dogs until significantly later into my life. So the song "Stuck in the Middle with You" has gained something of a reputation since this movie came out, and has a lot of negative connotations in people's minds. But I don't have much of that. I mean, now I do, now that I've seen this movie a million times.
Wait, why does it have that?
Well, not negative, just associated with horrific violence, which it certainly is in the movie. At least that's been my experience growing up. Like, when I was growing up, I'd hear the song, I really liked it. And then at some point in my life, I started to hear people, when that song come on, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, watch your fucking ears, everybody. People got knives around. Don't literally cut off your ear." Lol, remember Quentin Tarantino's movie, you guys? That's what they would say.
The movie is not a gore fest. Like, it's not a horror movie or anything. It's not body parts being chopped off willy-nilly. But that one effect of the side of the dude's face with his ear off is so gruesome and so scary and cool looking. It's like one of the best gore effects ever in a film.
It is really... At first, I was thinking, like, oh, they're not going to show it when you look at it, because they kind of don't. You see his ear cut off. You can't see that side.
Yeah, the first shot, they don't show it, because I was like, oh, that's a neat way of getting around it, you know? Like, they're just showing his other side, then you have the prosthetic in Mr. Blonde's hand, and you just kind of put two and two together. But they show it later, and I think the reason it's so impactful is that this whole movie is incredibly grounded. It's not like you're in a horror film where there's like gore and everything all the time, where this would just get lost in it. This is like the one scene where things get graphic. And because everything's so grounded, it really fucking like impacts.
That's the tension of violence being just pulled. These guys have guns. There's one moment where Mr. White and Mr. Pink, when they're talking, as Mr. Pink is just like being like, hey man, sometimes you gotta get cool. And they're talking about Mr. Blonde's shoot. And he's like, you gotta just take him and you panic in your head. And then you see him, he's putting bullets back into his gun. And he does that, and Mr. White jumps and turns around. And so the threat of violence is like always there, and I feel that that's us.
And the violence is portrayed realistically, like when he says to Mr. Orange, "Your gut shot. It's gonna take you a few days to die. You're just gonna wish you were dead."
Is that true? I never knew if that was true.
I believe it's true because I read it in a Punisher comic where he shot a guy in the gut just to let him die slowly.
The gut's the most painful place a guy can get shot.
The most realistic thing ever, a Punisher comic. Definitely a good source.
I really like the how like the three, the shootout with the three of them holding the guns.
Yeah.
Like, obviously in reality, when people are like pointing guns at each other, they everyone needs to be like distracted enough to not worry about things, to like lower their guns. And in that situation, like in any other movie, it would have been drawn out for a really long time. There'd be close-ups of people's eyes, like a Western. But they just shoot each other because they're all tense, they're all stubborn, and they're all like fucking hyped up and like.
Yeah.
It was great the first time I saw this, when like they all got shot and died, because I didn't expect everyone to die.
It's a little bit strange, because, so in that scene, Big Joe has his gun pointed at Mr. Orange, Mr. White points his gun at Joe, and then Eddie points his gun at Mr. White, who's, threatening his father.
Yeah, I always have to watch that a few times, like, who the hell shot Eddie?
Yeah, well, the thing is, Mr. White shoots Joe, then he real quick turns his gun and shoots Eddie as he's, like, falling to the ground.
But does he do both? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, who else would have done it? There was only his gun.
I thought Mr. Orange had shot him.
Nah, Mr. Orange is... I don't think so.
Mr. Orange clip had been emptied into Mr. Blonde.
Yeah, Mr. Orange had no bullets left, I don't believe.
I went back and looked like a couple times to make sure, and it maybe it's like the frame rate of the version I was looking at, but I only saw one muzzle flash from Mr. White, and it was aimed at Eddie.
It happens really fast, and maybe that's on purpose. I don't know. So you're not really sure, or maybe it's just dumb and doesn't make sense, but whatever.
Yeah, that's kind of the weird thing. Like, he had to pull some, like, he literally had been shot by Eddie already. Okay, I'm watching it right now. I'm going back. Okay, no, there's definitely at least 2 bullets out of Mr. White's gun. I can see from the thing.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I mean, it's kind of a big arm swing to turn from Joe to Eddie after he gets shot.
Well, only a wrist swing.
Well, okay, I guess it's not that big. Okay, this is one of those things that's like, okay, it's a little odd that he was able to kill both.
Like Mr. White gets shot,
yeah,
right? But he doesn't die. So like when he gets hit, obviously it's not enough to totally incapacitate him, because he goes over to Mr. Orange after.
That's right.
And eventually killed by the cops. So he's got it in him to take another shot, I guess.
I love that Mr. Orange basically had no reason to fess up to Mr. White at the end.
He had no reason at all.
But he just did it out of, like, respect for this dude who is now his friend.
And Mr. White, of course, to his friend, he pulls the gun and shoots him in the fucking head as the cops are right there.
Yeah.
God, what a fucking moment.
Such a decision to make. Like,
yeah.
He could have lived. I wasted all of this for you, you fucking cop, but you're my boy.
Man, that when Mr. Blonde, it is so tense when he's pouring the gasoline on the cop. It's so scary, even knowing that he's gonna be saved by Mr. Orange. It's still tense every time. And then after all that tension and that relief of like, oh, thank God he got saved, then fucking other dude just comes in there and says, fuck this guy, and just shoots him twice, and it's like, oh no.
Yeah, Eddie just it's like Mr. Orange just threw. He could have lived if he. I mean, if he just let him burn. But he couldn't let him burn, goddammit. His emotions, the plan got fucked up. He didn't want to watch a man burn.
Well, I mean, at that point, like, the interesting thing is, like, you realize watching it later, the reason why he went out of his way to save that guy is because he already killed the woman by accident. And but the scene before that, he had let 2 other cops die by not breaking cover with Mr. White fucking...
That's true.
Empties.
That's true.
So he's already had 3 people die in his watch. He doesn't want it to happen again.
Yeah, okay. And can we talk about one of the unsung heroes real quick involved in this scene? Of course, Marvin Nash, the cop who was captured, who was being tortured. They were like, who's the fucking rat? What do you know? Like, tell us what you know. What happened? Who got set up?
I've only been on the force 8 months. I don't know shit.
They're fucking torturing him.
Oh my God.
They're about to fucking burn him. He does not say, he's like, I don't know. Mr. Orange kills Mr. Blonde, and he's like, hey, dude, I'm a cop. And the cop just says, I know. He fucking knew the whole what a fucking badass that fucking cop
seriously.
is. I would have sung like a fucking turkey, man, on Christmas Day. I would have told them every fucking thing they needed to know and more.
He had to know he would get killed either way, though.
I mean, I think he knew it would make a difference.
As soon as they tied me to the chair, I would have been like, I want to join you guys. I want to be a criminal now.
I want to be a bad guy now.
I want to be a criminal
like
in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah. I surrender my coptitude.
It's a testament to the tension of that scene that, like, I had fucking forgotten that Mr. Blonde gets shot at the end. Like, I fully was expecting him to just burn the guy. I've seen this movie at least 3 times, and I still did not even remember that that's how that ends, because it's just, it happens so suddenly, you know? He's like, how about a little fire, scarecrow, and then just, bam, gone, you know? And you're like, oh, shit.
Right. It was, like, really unexpected, because, I mean, because I've never seen it before. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I just thought the whole introduction of Mr. Blonde was fucking fantastic, because, like, we're told, you know, secondhand that he's, like, crazy, and he's the one who let everything go to shit because he started executing people. And we don't know if that's true. And then he shows up, and we realize that Mr. Blonde, he's, like, totally cool, calm, collected, and seems to have his head on his shoulders way better than
apparently had time to go to McDonald's on the
right.
Just
like
getaway.
Yeah, with a cop in the trunk.
So like he's totally legit, and then he just plays it cool the entire time, and then as soon as everybody leaves, he just starts fucking freaking out on this cop guy, and it's like, oh well, yeah,
real
he's
psycho,
fucked.
real fucking psycho.
And that's after you have the scene where he's like you know, thankful to Joe for helping him out while he was in prison, and like they have like this kind of like bond.
And even the torture is like all business. He's not like raising his voice. He's not like really like losing it. He's just like, hey, I'm having a good time killing a guy.
The only thing that makes him act up is when the cop says your boss, and he insinuates that he's got a boss. Then he's like, let me tell you something. I don't have a fucking boss, you piece of shit. You got that? You got that?
I really want to know what exactly Mr. Blonde's job ordinarily was, because when they come out, he's like desperate to get more work, and nice guy Eddie says, I know you don't like to use the boys on jobs like this, but
I mean, I think it's pretty clear that in my many watches, what I've gleaned is that Mr. Blonde is like on the regular, like I think they're like the Italian mob, and it looks like he's one of like the boys on their crew. What does he call him? He's a good fella. He's a good fella.
I don't think there's much reason to think that they don't know that he's a psycho.
It might have been jail that did it to him, though, because 4 years is a long time.
Could be. Have you ever seen Bacano?
Yes.
Do you remember in like the first episode of that show, there's like a guy who is their torture guy? Like the mob like will bring people to this one dude who's like who just like locks people in a room and tortures them in a chair, and like that he's that guy, and he's like a relatively high ranking member of the gang. So I'm wondering if that's what he does. Like, if he's just a fucking psycho who they have on hand to torture people, and like ordinarily he would not do just like a heist. He would just be their torture guy. But they're like, I mean, we really need guys because the gang was not in a good position. You know, they were like desperate, which might be also why they brought in the cop, because like they're just like things aren't going really well for them and they don't really know what the fuck to do. So they're like,
that's true.
We got to put together some kind of heist. We got to get some money together. Who can we fucking throw at this? I guess Mr. Blonde's out of prison. You know, we were gonna have him lay low for a while, but we'll have to throw him on it. And like this new guy, you know, we don't necessarily trust him yet, but he seems fine. Let's fucking do it. And that's the undoing of their whole, you know, the desperation.
You know what's another really cool little character moment that sort of like more develops Mr. Orange is like when Mr. Orange is talking to his cop friend about the mob boss guy. He's like, he looks just like the Thing from the Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
And then later, when you see Mr. Orange's apartment, there's a Silver Surfer poster. So you know, okay, this dude loves comics and stuff. He knows that's why he had that Thing reference ready. It's just little details like that are so cool.
We see so tiny little glimpses into their backstory, like when Mr. White is having his little flashback with Joe, and like they're obviously buddies, they know each other a long time. He's just like, hey, Mr. White, Larry, where's that Bama at? And he's like, oh, Alabama? Oh, me and her, we did 4 jobs and we split up. You do that man and woman thing too long, it starts to get to you. So she's working other jobs. It's like, what? Tell me more of your backstory, Mr. White. What other jobs have you pulled? What other heists and capers have you been up to? Because we know he was in at least one job. He said 2 jobs back with another undercover cop that they found out before they went ahead with it. Otherwise, he probably would have been done right there. But I love those little glimpses into. I mean, we don't see. This is basically the Mr. White, Mr. Blonde, Mr. Pink a little bit, but Mr. Orange like story, and those are like the deepest characters.
Just thinking about how fucking good Harvey Keitel's performance in this movie is, like, I think Tim Roth is incredible and Steve Buscemi is incredible, but fucking Harvey Keitel is like, he grounds this movie. Like,
for sure.
His performance is so multifaceted. He's believable in every scene. When you see him like smiling and having a good time, he's like incredibly likable. When he's a hard ass, he's a hard ass. And you get the best fucking, like, the most badass moment in the movie. Because, like, overall, these guys are scumbags. Most of the violence is not necessarily gratifying. But, like, Mr.
When Mr.
White,
Pink does his shootout, it's like an accident almost that he even gets away. Yeah.
And also he has like fucking 15 bullets in his clip, I think. He fires a lot of fucking
like
bullets. But Mr. White, when we see that he fucking dual-handed, like, took out 2 cops like a fucking badass, right after having made reference to, like, Charles Bronson, who was, like, still doing action movies at about this age, with the dual, like, it looks like a scene from a Charles Bronson movie, and, like, he's just fucking going apeshit, and it's like, this whole movie, you've had him built up as, like, obviously he's a guy with a long history. He's like a real professional. He's been around forever. He's a hard ass. He's mentioned that he'll kill people if they're in his way. He will kill cops. Like, we know he's capable of all that, but we've mostly seen him being a softie. Like, the whole movie has been him babying Mr. Orange, keeping people away from him, like, being, like, the emotional guy. But, like, when the chips are down, he is the most hard-ass fucking bad dude that there is.
Right. Like, zero hesitation, just fucking mows these dudes down. Like, it ain't
the second they pull onto the scene, just done.
He does what he got to do. He does what he needs to do.
I like how they cut to the inside of the car and they just show how they're just getting fucking eviscerated just to really sell it.
Bounced all over the place.
Hey, speaking of which, they say that Mr. Brown was shot in the head, and we know he dies at that moment. He's got a blood spot at the very center of his forehead. Was he literally shot in, like, the front of his fucking brain and then just drove away somehow?
I don't think he was shot then. Was he? I thought he just I thought he hit his head in the crash. They crashed into another car.
Yeah, I mean, that's true.
Yeah, that was a little confusing. I think what it was that he hit it, like, something went wrong during the drive and he hit his head and started bleeding, and after that he couldn't continue driving the car. He crashed again. And then when they weren't looking, a stray bullet went through his head and he was, like, slumped over. So I don't think we saw the bullet go in, but, like, we saw that he was dead, and they apparently saw the bullet go in.
I feel like moments like these are the mark of, like, okay, a little bit inexperienced of a filmmaker. Some of these things were kind of confusing with these details. Like, what exactly happened to Mr. Brown? I don't quite understand, as you said. Maybe if he took a second take at making this movie, he would have cleaned that up just, like, a little bit, add a couple of details here or there.
But I think in a lot of ways, his inexperience as a filmmaker makes the film. Because, like, it's pure. The directorial trademarks of Quentin Tarantino are so known. His movies have such a style to them that anyone can talk about or parody. It's almost like, how do you not play into your own meme? But this is when it was before the meme of Quentin Tarantino. He was still creating his trademark style. So the movie comes off, like, really pure. It feels like, on the one hand, it feels like the quintessential Tarantino flick, but on the other hand, it also, paradoxically, it feels like not like a Tarantino flick. It's just like a pure movie. It's like the first.
There's so much less going into it,
The only movie that was made by Tarantino the man, not Tarantino the meme.
It's before he had the money to just go completely crazy and do whatever the fuck he wanted, you know.
It's also it's what he created with no expectation, right? There was no no impetus for him to follow up with anything.
Yeah, and I love how inexpensive the movie is because it lends to that feeling of just a movie. Like, I love movies, I love stories that are just like all the story unfolds in one room with just characters interacting through that. Like, the whole movie kind of reminds me of like the Twilight Zone episode, 5 characters in search of an exit, where like it's like a clown and a hobo and a Scotsman, and they're trying to get out of this like round cylinder, and at the end you find out they're just toys in a garbage can.
Right.
So like
right.
It's kind of like that, where like it's just characters in a place trying to get out of the place and interacting, and then no one gets out at the end because they're all toys in a garbage can and they get shot.
You know, this idea of like figuring out a style, it's like you kind of, there's a certain logic that you'd think like the first in a series, the first like game or movie in a series would be like the most of that thing. It'd be like the purest distillation, but really like the memes hadn't solidified yet. So like, for example, like Kingdom Hearts 1 is kind of the least Kingdom Hearts-y of any of the games because they hadn't like perfected the formula yet that I don't even think they like it necessarily improved past 2 or anything.
Well,
but
it's harder when you have a big creative team and the guys in charge are changing out and stuff. Like with Tarantino, and I think that this movie is like the most proof of how good he is, because like any of his other movies, and I love Tarantino's movies in general. My favorites would be like Inglourious Bastards, Kill Bill, or Pulp Fiction, but like this movie is like, because it's so stripped back, because he can't put in all those, like if you watch Kill Bill, you could just be like, oh, I love it because of the fucking crazy 88 action scene, or like all the fucking animation scenes, or like the shifts in color and all that stuff, like all the bells and whistles, the artsy stuff, the crazy more expensive stuff. But like by looking at this movie, you can see proof that he really doesn't need any of that. He can just make a great movie with just a great script and some great actors. And like,
and that's what I care about.
The other crazy thing about it, and I didn't even know this until just doing research, like Harvey Keitel is a well-known actor who was, able to help fund this. Tim Roth, Michael Madsen, and Steve Buscemi. According to the Wikipedia article, Tarantino had gone and just done casting in New York and found these guys. And like looking at their filmography, they'd all been in movies, but like nothing huge. They had not been like major motion picture actors. They were not like well known. They were not celebrities. This movie is probably why they have big careers. Why Steve Buscemi is like a well-known actor, because he's in this movie, and he does an incredible job. But like, it's a testament again to that the script is good enough to allow that. Like, actors, no matter how good an actor is, they're not going to give a great performance if the script is dog shit. Like, we've seen this with plenty of great actors who show up in shitty movies. You know, Samuel L. Jackson will star in a billion fucking random films, and he can suck in some of them because they're just bad. But like, because these guys had such well-defined characters that they could really get into, they just put on incredible performances, and like now all of them are on some level, celebrities. So
that's definitely true. Although it's fair to say that like, since this movie only really got popular after Pulp Fiction, and people went back to it and started paying attention. People like Steve Buscemi, I don't think show up in any of his other films. So it's interesting. Like if Tarantino's career had just stopped with this movie, I don't feel like people like Steve Buscemi would have had much of a career. But like, obviously other people would have. Like Keitel already had his, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know. It's interesting to note that this movie laid the groundwork, but it's that other movies that like got more famous and retroactively made this one do better. Yeah, we're kind of part of the. It's like Tarantino's career is what really blossomed and made people take off. Even though, I mean, this is my favorite Tarantino movie,
and especially because
my favorite moments.
He very much is about putting himself into the movies. He wants you to know it's a Tarantino movie. He wants you to know that like, it's his hallmarks, it's his movies. He wants to have a perfect filmography. He wants to have the DVD shelf of great movies, as he calls it. Like,
indeed.
So I think that this movie is very much like an opening statement of a career that he's expecting to continue down this road. Like, he is expecting to reuse these tricks. He's expecting to have this style in the future. Yes, all of my movies are going to be told anachronically and have pop music and violence and swearing. You know, like, this is
we
what
haven't
I'm
even
about.
talked about K. Billy's super sounds of the '70s and the underlying current. You know, I don't feel I don't think I get it. I don't think I get it. I love it.
Well, there you
I
go.
love
That's
the
why we
music.
haven't talked about it.
Yeah,
Well, that's the thing.
that's
It's just pure style, and like, I'll say that a lot of people who don't like Tarantino, they don't like him because of the fact that they think he's style over substance, that he has these things in his movies that are just there because he likes them.
Maybe with the other movies, not this one.
Well, I mean,
style is substance.
The 70s soundtrack thing is an example of this, of like, that is what people accused that of being at the time. You know, people were like, this pop music is just forced into the movie to be edgy and cool. And like,
I have one theory. I don't have I haven't looked this up. Maybe with a little research I could figure it out. But it's just Tarantino's style has always been like, I want to recreate the movies I loved when I was young and want to like take my own spin on them. And you know, like Kill Bill being his like action kung fu movie, and this being crime drama shit. I don't know. Maybe it's a statement about like the characters refer to K. Billy's super sound as the '70s from the very beginning of the movie as like, hey man, like, remember how things were back in the day? I haven't heard this shit in a million years, man. And here it comes back on the radio, brings me all these feelings back. I feel like the movie itself is designed to be that way.
I would say that what it comes down to for me, what makes all that style stuff work is that,
because this doesn't feel like a '90s movie to me. It feels like a '70s or an '80s movie.
I know he said it was the biggest influence on the movie is The Killing by Stanley Kubrick, according to the Wikipedia.
I've never fucking seen that. I gotta check that shit out.
Me neither. It's also a heist movie, so like, that was
Fuck yeah.
But like, Tarantino also gets a lot of shit for the fact that he, just kind of wholesale copies scenes out of other movies and stuff.
Right.
But like, I think that the point of all of that is that this is all stuff that's in our cultural understanding. It's how we understand ourselves. Because we consume media, we come to use that to understand the world and ourselves and like how we fit into it. And then he's just distributing that back into the media. It's like, all these movies have shaped who I am, and now I'm going to show you who I am through movies, and who I am is movies. So it's like,
agreed.
That's where the metatextual, like, kind of postmodern element of his films comes in, where it's like, they are deliberately belonging in a space where all these other movies do exist, because why shy away from that? Like, it would be at a point where people are media saturated and media savvy, where people do have conversations about music, about movies. To shy away from that is more unrealistic. Like, it's weird to me a lot of the times when I'm watching movies and characters never make reference to anything.
Like when you watch a zombie movie and nobody calls them zombies, that always fucking drives me nuts.
Yeah, it's always funny.
And it's interesting the way that, like, some of the, like, in comic book movies, they do it differently every time, but like, in some movies it's almost like comics don't exist in this universe, and then in other movies they make it very clear that comics do exist, and possibly even comics of these characters, like, after they've had their origin story, they are now a comic book superhero. I think that was the case in like Spider-Man or something.
That's in Logan. His exploits with the X-Men are written into comics, and he looks at them and goes, these are trash, these are made up, this is bullshit.
But yeah, like, I think that's a big part of why it starts off with this conversation about real music that people would have been listening to in, Madonna's Like a Virgin was not a super old song in 1992. So like,
is this set in the 90s?
Yeah, it's in the 90s.
It's in current day.
I mean, for Like a Virgin to even have existed, it would have to have been in like either the late 80s or early 90s. Like, it's, again, it's not a super old song. So like,
is that not just from the 70s? I mean, it's the super sounds of the 70s, right?
No, Madonna's Like a Virgin? Madonna was not around in the 70s.
Okay, it was apparently came out in 84. Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
It feels like it's in the 80s.
It's older than
you're
I
right. That's not a K. Billy. They're simply discussing the song. That's right. That's right.
So
okay.
so like, they're talking about things that are that are in the public consciousness of the time. Like, this is what people are listening to. It's what they're talking about. It's a little hipstery to even have them be having this conversation. And I think that introing the movie with that, and then, because it's Tarantino talking, like at the start of the film, it's his character. He's going on about Madonna. It's kind of weird. It's kind of nerdy. But when we break away from him to go to Harvey Keitel and everybody else starts talking about like more normal things, we kind of ground ourselves in the idea that, okay, these guys aren't a bunch of music hipsters. It's just that guy. He's the weirdo. But it sets the tone for the movie, because the movie's made by a hipster, you know? But it's not about
very true
hipsters. So it's like, that it's interesting the way that he leads you in with that and then kind of dispels it over the course of this coming scene. Also, we skipped over this, but we have to talk about my favorite, the most enduring conversation of the movie to me is the tipping conversation.
Oh, yeah, of course. Of course.
Which I have reenacted with people because I do tip, but I think the fact that nobody talks about how daft the system of tipping is drives me insane. Like,
could this be the most important discussion on tipping ever had in any medium? I think it unequivocally is.
I mean,
my
Mr.
contention.
Pink doesn't make the best possible case for it, but he does say, like, my favorite line is when he says, like, you know, put it on a ballot, I'll vote for it. Like, I'll change. Yeah. I would be down to change this system, but the system is retarded, and why are we doing this? You know, like, why are we paying them less than they're supposed to make and then tipping them even if they don't do a great job, when it should just be that they get paid for doing a good job. And like, if everybody's tipping them, well, then clearly they're not making that little, you know? So like, where's the trade-off here? Like, how are they impoverished, or are they doing this job because it pays well because of tips? And if so, you know, where does their performance factor in? You know, if they do something exceptional, I feel that I've had this conversation myself many times. It's like, yeah, I'll tip a waitress more if she actually does a good job, but like, more than 10% is like, if you didn't fucking do anything, why am I paying you extra? You know, when it's the industry that's the problem.
That's absolutely, and it's our standard. American listeners, other countries are not like this. America is fairly unique.
Yeah, I mean, as an Englishman, it's not normal to me.
Who was that fucking Ben Carson? I think it was his fault. I think he's the one who caused this.
What? How's that?
Because he created the law that made this possible, the tipping rules in America.
Oh.
Like, it's not...
Well, hang on. He wasn't a politician. He was a surgeon or something.
It was somebody like him.
Okay, someone did it. Okay.
It was a politician who made this a thing in like the 70s or 80s or something like that. It hasn't been this way forever, I don't think.
Right.
But yeah, the system of tipping, for those outside of America who don't understand and maybe are lost in this movie, like, the minimum wage for waitresses in America is less than the normal minimum wage because they get tips, but they are taxed on those tips. So it's a super fucking bizarre system, and I don't know why we don't just pay them regular wages.
It's pretty bullshit, because it puts you on the hook to pay their salary.
Right.
Which is fucking insane.
Hang on, but doesn't Buscemi says they make minimum wage?
Which was what I was going to bring up. That's not true. All the time.
Was it true at the time or something? Is that,
I'm not sure.
Things change?
Well,
no one corrects it.
I don't know if he meant that they make minimum wage automatically, or if he meant that they are making at least that much after tips.
Right. Maybe that's true. Has he studied the fucking law? I don't know.
The idea with the law is that they make a minimum wage with tips, therefore you don't have to be paid minimum wage on your checks, which is
that makes some sense.
Retarded.
I guess,
no, it's not.
I mean, in practice, I don't like it.
It doesn't make sense because, like he said, it puts the impetus entirely on, and it's random fucking chance if somebody's going to tip you or not. Because a lot of people don't. Like,
I mean, as Mr. Pink says, if you're expecting me to help out with the fucking rent, you're in for a big fucking surprise. So don't put it on me, people.
Don't you think
I'm physically forced?
You think about it, the impetus really is on us, the end consumers, to stop tipping, so the workers are forced to riot against their employers and change the law. We are preventing this from being solved.
See the way I feel about it is that like having to tip stresses me out. Therefore, my situation and my feeling on this, like my experience at this restaurant was lessened. Therefore, my tip is 0.
That's true. They're hurting themselves.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg of the problems in this country.
And let me tell you from experience that the conversation usually goes just like how it does in this movie, which is you're the asshole for even bringing up the idea of not tipping. So
well, you got to propose a reform position or something to look like a good guy. Otherwise, you can just think you're cheap, as they accuse Mr. Pink of being, who did nothing wrong.
I like how when old man the Thing says
Joe,
when he says you didn't tip, just fucking throw in a buck, you piece of shit. And it's like
$1. They're asking for $1.
I would usually stick to my guns, but because you're so big, I'll throw in a little.
But since you are the Thing and you will clobber me.
No, he said I paid for your meal, and he said since you paid for the meal, I'll do it.
I mean that's pretty fair. It's pretty
but
fair.
It definitely feels like a sort of like, if the social pressure gets too much, then I'll tip. But if I can get away with not tipping,
I fucking love Mr. Pink. I just love that he makes that argument, and I understand why a lot of people would think that he's just being an asshole. But like, he's not unreasonable at all.
Dude, the best part of that scene is when Mr. Orange is just like, he convinced me, give me my $1 back.
Yeah,
I'm on board. I'm on board now. But they just won't let him fucking do it. Those fat cats.
Was that Mr. Orange who says that?
That was Mr. Yeah, and considering it's Mr. Orange is right now an undercover cop, he's like rocking the boat by like wanting $1 back. Dude, take it easy.
I noticed that, and I thought, is that him trying to like fit in more as like a criminal would? Is he thinking like a criminal?
Have you noticed? I mean, this is like a well-known TV tropes about the movie, but have you guys noticed that right in that scene, the one who snitches on Mr. Pink is Mr. Orange, the snitch?
That's true.
That's like foreshadowing the fact that he's a cop.
Also, who is it that says to the other guy like "I'll shoot you" and like makes like a gun hand,
in that scene?
That was Mr. Blonde.
Mr. Blonde is the one they say shoot this guy. Not to mention Mr. White and Mr. Orange are sitting next to each other. Mr. Orange has his arm around Mr. White.
Right in
like,
that
part
first
of the fucking
conversation, it foreshadows like what every character's who they are. And it's cool.
Yeah. Shoot this piece of shit. Oh, it's dope.
I'm sure he did that very deliberately so that when you rewatch the movie, you would go, "Oh shit,
dude.
No
doubt.
That's
my
why I
fucking
love it so
mind
much.
is blown."
It's a conversation that on the face of it seems not natural and boring and pointless, but is like really integral to the movie, and you couldn't get rid of it.
Oh, it's great.
Hell
it's great.
Movies are fucking good.
Let me see. Is there anything else to say about this?
I will say before we wrap up, there was one shot, and this is like the most pedantic, asshole-ish thing to say, but I noticed it and I was very confused. There's one shot about an hour and 2 minutes into the movie. It's where Mr. Orange is confessing that he is a cop, and the guy, the police officer type's like, "I know." And there's a shot. It's like a shot reverse shot as they're talking. And it's the police officer who's like tied up. It's like he's right in the foreground, and then it's Mr. Orange on the ground in the background. And I don't know if it was just the legal file that I was sent.
No, I know what you're talking about. It looks like a weird composite shot.
Yeah, they the camera couldn't have them both in focus, so they literally have one shot on the left that's like, in focus for him, and then they cut the frame down the middle because like half the background is in focus, so you can see Mr. Orange. The other
shot looked weird as fuck. And
is
I was
blurred.
Like, what the hell is going on?
I assumed that was like some sort of artsy thing because the guy who had been tortured, like his eye was cut and he could only half see.
I don't know.
And he didn't have depth perception anymore.
Maybe
like,
it could be.
I don't think that's even true.
But it seemed to me that they just didn't have a camera that could have them both in focus for some reason.
It's a visual indication of the disorientation on that side of his face because his ear is off.
Is it Nerd Writer in
that
here?
could
Is
be
this? Are we? Every frame of painting, you guys.
Hey, don't you fucking talk shit about every frame of
They're
painting.
dead, Digi. I can disrespect them all I want.
I mean, it seems so different from everything else that it feels strange than it would be like an accident.
Oh, hey, I actually do have one thing to shit on this movie about, even though it's like my favorite movie of all time. Definitely one of them. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. Tim Roth, Mr. Orange, he is British. He sounds fucking weird, man. His voice is weird the whole movie. He's like I'm fucking dying, Mr. Like he sounds strange, not like I don't know. His voice, I love it. I like it too.
I mean, I don't know what a man sounds like when he's bleeding to death. So I guess I can't cross-reference.
I watched an interview with him, and he kind of brought that up. He was like, it was a real challenge for me to be a British guy playing an American guy, playing a criminal, playing who's actually a cop. So it's like it was like 5 degrees of fakery.
I feel for him. I'm just saying.
He did bring up that this shit was hard.
Yeah. See. Okay. So there's some accountability.
Yeah. It's hard to scream in all of those accents stacked on top of each other.
You know, the only thing I want to say is just a return to the reason I set this whole thing up, because I just saw fucking Tarantino's 9th film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and just seeing where the little boy has blossomed and he's got fucking Brad Pitt. He's got Leo doing multiple movies and shit. He's really blossomed. He's really doing lots of crazy stuff. And you know, I watched before I watched that, I saw the Red Letter Media review, and it's so impressive. He's got such a love for the medium, and while everybody's getting in like CG and I don't know, doing all this other stuff, there's all these amazing shots of just like the city of Los Angeles, and it's absolutely beautiful. Like, he's got so many extras in some of these shots, all the crazy wide shots, and all the sets they have to design and prepare for them. You can tell he's a man who loves his cinema, and I love him for doing it. And seeing it back at the start here in Reservoir Dogs, his humble beginnings, and even this, you know, with like $1 million budget, thanks to an actor finding his script like endearing and compelling and stuff. It's just, he was just a fucking nerd, man. He was just a fucking nerd working in a video store who decided he wanted to, like, I think he went to film school for a little bit and just, like, paid his way.
He went to acting school for a couple years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, he didn't go to film school at all. He just went to acting school. But as a huge fan of Tarantino and somebody who tried to make my own independent film career at some point, like, Tarantino is very adamant about the idea of, like, you don't need school. Movies are your school. Like, just what you have to do is, his advice to people is, if you want to get off the ground as a filmmaker, write scripts on every weekday after you get home from work, shoot something on the weekends. So, like,
good plan.
I think that he'd made like short films and stuff, I think, on his own.
Yeah.
You know, like he was developing experience. He was trying to, you know, he had friends who could star in his movies and stuff. And again, this movie was supposed to be a $30,000 film shot with his friends, with the producer as an actor. And he was just able to beef it up by the fact that Harvey Keitel happened to come in contact with it. Networking, it's important.
It's important.
Yeah, like it's like one of the most beloved cult classics of all time. A film that's like on every list of the best movies. It's always in the top 100. It's and that reminds me, I'm so fucking glad I didn't forget to talk about this, because I think probably what is the most important thing about this movie to its cultural cachet is not the writing, it's not the technical elements or the acting or anything like that. All of that is what you get when you like look at it and think about it. It's the surface elements. The black suits are like the most important thing in this fucking movie.
They're certainly iconic.
Like, the fact that the characters are like, it's the most, these characters are not realistic at all, in spite of everything we've said. Like, the idea that there would be like 6 guys in black suits who do heists, like, is a fucking cartoon idea.
And one asshole in a windbreaker, that part's realistic.
It's just like, it's so like absurd. But because it's so well written, you don't like it's not that you buy into it just because the writing is so good. It's because you want to. You want this to be reality.
Yeah.
You want there to be 6 guys in black suits who do heists, because every guy wants to be in this group.
I want there to be more dead cops and more torture.
Yes, exactly. Like,
and I want to shoot myself.
I took a photography class, and my teacher was a guy who shot weddings, right? And he said that like almost every wedding shoot he does, they do the Reservoir Dogs shot. Like, the groom and all his groomsmen will do the shot of them walking down the alley from the start of the movie. It's every guy wants this to be them. They want to be the cool guy in the black suit going off to do a fucking heist with a bunch of guys.
I literally don't care if I get shot and die at the end. I just want once in my life to do a heist, kill some cops, and get to say cool stuff.
So like I think that like idea just at the heart of it is what draws people to this movie, and what's made it such a classic is like, yeah, it's a cool violent movie. It's got fucking gun. It's got the standoff at the end is to me the most iconic. Like just the idea of all these guys pointing guns at each other and then they all fucking kill each other. It's just a perfect iconic ending. And like if you go into this movie and you're drawn in by the guys walking down the suits in the alley and you're like, oh, this is gonna be fucking cool. Right away, you've got a guy bleeding out, and so like the stakes are immediately mega high. You immediately are like deeply invested in the action, even though you're about to watch a bunch of fucking dialogue scenes that go on forever. It doesn't matter because you right away are like so tense watching this guy bleed out in the back of a car that like. Yeah. You know, the fact that the next 30 minutes are just like an unbroken dialogue between two dudes doesn't matter because what they're talking about is interesting. There's a guy bleeding out. We want to know what the fuck is going on. And then, like, even though we already know the ending of the story essentially before we know everything else, or like we're at the penultimate moment, we're at like the climax before the real ending. We still want to know everything else because we have so many questions and so much intrigue at the beginning. It's like we're begging for the exposition scenes. We're begging for the backstory as opposed to having to like, you know, just sit through it until we get to the cool shit. So yeah, that structural design and just the sheer power of the iconography. It's like if I only have $30,000, what can I put in my movie that will instantly communicate with the largest number of people? Cool black suits and a Mexican standoff. Everybody's gonna think this is awesome, you know?
And it is.
And he sure makes that soundtrack do work for him.
That too. And that's another part of I'm almost certain that a big part of why he chose that 70s music is because it's cheap. It's a lot cheaper than getting modern pop music. Tarantino's talked about before how when he does his scripts and he writes in like what music is going to be playing, he puts in really expensive songs in the script that he knows he won't get approved for. And then when he sends the second draft of the script, swaps them all out for cheaper songs so that the studio will think of it as like, oh, you just made it way cheaper, you know? Even though he doesn't intend to use those expensive songs in the first place. He just puts them in there to set that expectation. I mean, I'm sure now he could just do whatever the fuck
at this
wants,
point.
But, like, that was what he was doing early on. So, like, you know, I think probably he was like, hey, I love all these 70s songs, and they'll be real cheap to get the rights to because none of them are relevant. None of them are still selling, you know?
That's fascinating. You get your song in a Tarantino movie, I mean, interest is going to go through the fucking roof. I mean, there's so many songs I've fallen in love with.
Like fucking that one, the woohoo song from Kill Bill, like immediately in commercials and shit afterwards. Some like weird Japanese
fucking
pop
Verizon
song.
Commercial or whatever it was. Yeah. Enterprise, I don't know.
I think it was Verizon.
Well, lads, I guess that brings us to the end of the first episode of the Tarantinocast. Let me know what you thought of it, and if you liked it, we'll talk about doing the next one, which it's a lot of people's favorite Tarantino movie. Pulp Fiction is number 2. So
I ain't never seen
know.
That one.
I ain't never seen it either.
Whoa.
Well, perhaps we'll get the whole gang back together, the Reservoir Dogs, as you will, and we'll kill the rest of the cops that are out.
The Reservoir Dudes.
All right, thanks for being here, guys. See you next time. Bye-bye. Bang, 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 bang.
She put the lime in the coconut and called the doctor. Woke him up and said, doctor, said nothing I can take. She said, doctor, to relieve this bellyache. She said, doctor.
If they hadn't done what I told them not to do, they'd still be alive.